G'day, I'm McKEOWN from the Recreational Flying Company. Flight test and flight review data shows that some pilots are struggling to develop an accurate and reliable technique for carrying out forced landings without power following a simulated engine failure away from the airfield. This tutorial will help to address this by showing you a few simple tools to fly accurate and safe forced landings in a light sport aircraft. Specifically, selecting an obstacle-clear approach path for an interwind landing on your chosen field, flying the aeroplane to a base point at approximately 1,000 feet AGL, identifying an aiming point for touchdown, then using the constant relative position technique to fly an accurate vertical profile during the approach. During this tutorial, we'll be flying the Foxbat LSA using RFC procedures. As always, consult your flight manual and your flying instructor for specific operating policy.
The first point to keep in mind when flying a practiced forced landing is safety. Ensure that you are familiar with the terrain and obstacles in your practice area. Be wary of local and mechanical wind effects, particularly while operating at low level. Remember that flight below 500 foot requires special qualifications and approval, so go around by 500 foot AGL during solo practice. We have to be ready for engine failure at any time, even during practice, so always fly the aeroplane in such a manner that a successful forced landing option is always available, particularly when egressing from a practiced approach. Be ready and always have a field pre-selected. And finally, remember that when the engine fails, always fly the aeroplane first. This means maintaining best glide speed, balanced coordinated flight and keeping plenty of lookout. Don't perform any secondary actions like restart checks, mayday call or PAX brief until you have established safe gliding flight and are manoeuvring on a planned flight path towards your chosen field. Now let's go over the 3 points we're emphasizing in this tutorial. We talk a lot in training about looking for obstacles when selecting a field, but the area we really want to keep clear is the approach path. As you can see, having an approach over an obstacle can significantly reduce your effective landing distance. If no other option exists, and we must come in over an obstacle, make sure that sufficient landing distance is available and that a safe clearance height can be achieved. Landing into wind is also critical for landing in the shortest distance and surviving an impact after touchdown, so always try to land into wind. So, if possible, select an object-clear approach path for an interwind landing on your chosen field. Once your field and landing direction have been selected, we have to plan an approach. Gun barreling into the first field we see from a great height without a plan almost always ends badly. To land in a small field, we have to fly a well-organised and well-judged approach at the correct speed and angle. The best place to make final adjustments for our flight path is on base. During a normal circuit in an LSA, we start a gliding approach from 1,000 feet AGL at our base point, which is laterally about 45 degrees from your touchdown point. We're used to doing this, so it makes sense to do the same in a forced landing. In a forced landing situation, a left or right base is possible. So identify a base point for your selected field and fly the aeroplane while gliding to arrive at that point by 1,000 feet AGL. Approaching the base point, identify an aiming point for touchdown, just inside your field. A tuft of grass or a bit of earth that stands out will do, otherwise just eyeball the point. Now, geometry says if we keep that aiming point in a constant position in our line of sight, then that's where we'll end up. So manoeuvre the aeroplane on base to keep the aiming point in a constant position in your line of sight while maintaining the best glide speed. If the aiming point starts moving up in the windshield, we're getting low and must cut in towards the field. If the aiming point starts moving down in the windshield, we're getting high and must ease out a bit or put on some more flap. Once we turn final, we only have a limited ability to lose height with flap and side slip, so don't turn in until the angle is right and the aiming point is not moving. If necessary, overshoot final and S-turn to come in from the opposite base. Remember, to maintain balanced flight, lower your nose in turns and don't turn your back on the field. Establish the aeroplane with wings level on final and watch the aiming point. When sure of making the field, select final flap and side slip as required to achieve a touchdown just inside the field, maximising your landing distance available. Now let's see how that looks in practice.
Okay, simulated engine failure. Lowering the nose to the glide attitude. Identifying a landing area. We'll take the paddock to our left. Landing in this direction. Landing from the road end of the paddock. It's good, flat, open paddock. Fence line running parallel to our landing direction. The approach is good. Some power lines at this end, they won't trouble us. Altitude, just over 1,000 feet to lose to our base position, identifying the base position for the paddock. We're going to fly over to that point, keeping the aircraft trimmed for best glide. Height's good, angle's good, checking for paddock, all looks good. Okay, back inside. See if we can restart the engine with the fast checks. Fuel. Both tanks on. There's no carburetor heat or alternate air fitted to this aircraft, so ignore the A. S for switches, both on. Try restart, it's unsuccessful. Okay, back to the paddock. Approach looks good. Height looks good. About 500 feet to lose to my base position. Base points identified. Back inside, change radio frequencies to area frequency, practice Mayday call. Practice only, Mayday, 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 Foxbat 7963, Foxbat 7963, Foxbat 7963. Engine failure, 8 miles south of Gympie, forced landing in paddock, 2 POB. Back outside of the paddock, 200 feet to lose to the base position, coming up to that point nicely, paddock looks good. That motor car's just going past our landing point in the paddock. Height's good, angle's good, coming up to the base position. Passenger brief. Mark, we've had an engine failure. There's no need to worry. We're going to land in that paddock down here. Make sure your seatbelt's nice and secure. Get ready to brace yourself for the landing. Okay, rounding the base point now. Identifying an aiming point in the paddock, and we're going to keep that point in a constant position in our line of sight. Back inside, we're going to warm the engine now up to 4,000 revs for 2 seconds and then off. Back out to the paddock. I've got my aiming point, constant position in the line of sight. Speed's good, height's good. Too high to turn final yet, so I'll overshoot final and come in from the other side. Speed's good, height's good, aiming point's not moving. Speed's a little fast, that's fine. Aiming point's not moving. First stage of flap set, looking for the aiming point. Too high for final just yet. Manoeuvring around for a right base. Looking at the aiming point, constant position in our line of sight. Full flap selected, turning final, speed's a little high, checking speed. Wings level for final glide, aiming point's looking good. Side slip. Aiming point's looking good. Speed's good, checking for obstacles. Recovering from the side slip for the landing. Successful forced landing. Go around, full power, climb attitude, obstacles identified. Gentle turn, safe climb speed. Flap up one stage. Looking ahead, egress safely. Avoiding power lines, avoiding houses, avoiding obstacles. 300 feet AGL, flaps up, climbing out safely. Simulated engine failure, nose down immediately, the glide attitude. We land straight ahead, slight left turn, I've identified a paddock parallel to that road. Wings level, check speed, obstacle, power line on the approach. It's disappearing under the nose, that means we're going over it. Flap 1. Landing direction looks good. Flap 2, side slip as required. Successful recovery. Full power, gentle climb, flaps up one stage, gentle turn, looking ahead for safe egress. Flaps up.
Thanks for watching the tutorial.
You can find more information on advanced flying techniques at recreationalflyingco.com.